My name is Charles Mcneill. I work with the United Nations Environment Program. I'm the Senior Policy Advisor on Forests and Climate. I'm based at the UN headquarters in New York, and I've been focusing on issues of environmental protection, climate, biodiversity, forests for 25 years with the UN system. My spiritual or moral philosophy does have a big impact on my work. I have a practice of daily meditation, and this helps keep me centered, it keeps me focused, it keeps me present to what's going on. It helps me deal with and even dance with the challenges and the daily crises that come up. And it reminds me of what's really important. I think my meditation practice also helps me connect with people in an authentic way, in a way that provides value for them and me. And I think it helps me be more effective in dealing with challenges in the work. And it helps me retain a little bit more humility than I otherwise would, and even occasionally a sense of humor. And I think my sense is that solutions to these global crises will ultimately come down to an issue of opening our consciousness and our awareness of who we really are, how we're connected to each other, and how we're connected to nature. And that practically our mind state really determines what we think and what we do and how we act. So connecting with our inner selves, I think, is extremely important for personal change, community change, and global change. So in a word, my meditation practices are very important in my work on every single day. With regard to dealing with the climate crisis facing humankind, one element, one component, one solution that receives a lot less attention than it needs to has to do with those iconic and exuberant expressions of life called rainforests. As it turns out, no matter what we do to transform our energy systems, our transport systems, and other drivers of climate change, if we don't protect our forests, we simply can't get there. We can't avert the crisis that we're headed towards. And for people of faith, my sense is that protecting tropical rainforests is right in their wheelhouse, speaks right to who they are, in the sense that it's a sanctity of life issue. It's a human rights issue. It's an environmental justice issue. And if tropical forests were a country, the emissions from forests of greenhouse gases would be the third highest in the world, just after China and the US. So it's an incredibly significant contribution to climate change. And what's really tragic about it is that it could be the solution, that if we were to protect these forests and restore them, we can get 1/3 of the way to reaching the Paris climate goals. So instead of being the solution that they easily can be, they're actually a driver of deforestation, and that needs to change. They're important also because 80% of all terrestrial species on Earth live in rainforests, that they regulate the climate. They provide food and water and jobs for billions of people. And when we cut them down, like in the Amazon, we actually lose 56 million years of evolution. You can't replace that easily, obviously. For 56 million years, life has evolved in the most dramatic and diverse way imaginable. And in addition, this tropical deforestation is putting us at risk of diseases like COVID. It's putting animals and humans in contact in a way never done before, and exposing us to diseases could be the basis for other pandemics. And losing forests is undermining the lives and livelihoods of indigenous peoples, those custodians, those safeguarders of the forest for thousands of years. So, in a word, losing these forests is making the world a hotter, drier, and more dangerous place. And we just can't have that. One more thing to remember is that these tropical forests generate rainfall, not only locally for the agriculture, but even half a continent away. So the benefits are just beyond imagination. And so that's one element of the challenge that needs attention. And the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative is dealing with that by convening interfaith leaders together with Indigenous leaders and others to protect rainforests and the rights of Indigenous peoples around the world. To address the climate challenge of the loss of tropical forests, we would want to ask the question, well, what's driving that loss? And it's true that extractive industries, the mining, the logging, the gas, the poaching, that these industries, much of it illegal, is driving deforestation around the world. But the single largest driver of deforestation, land conversion, that's putting pressure on the planet is a lot less sinister, and it's called food. So we've already developed more than half of the planet's habitable surface of the Earth. That is, half of the planet that's habitable is devoted to agriculture alone. And of that, over 3/4 is just for livestock. And that's a very inefficient and ecologically damaging way to produce food. And this half the planet that we've developed and we're growing food on is already enough to feed the 10 billion people that we're expected to have in 2050. So there are 3 things we can do to solve that problem: to reduce the impact of food production on forests and on the climate, because we already have enough food, we already have enough land under cultivation, but we need to do 3 things. We need to increase agriculture productivity. We know how to do that, it's doable. Number 2, we need to reduce food waste. 1/3 of all the food we produce right now is wasted. And just imagine the loss of the resources and the water and the fertilizer and all of that happens when you waste food. And the 3rd one, which is maybe not as intuitive, is that we need to shift our diets and reduce meat consumption and increase plant consumption. And that's important not only for the planetary health, but it's important for our personal health. You know, currently, the comorbidities associated with COVID-19, those conditions, underlying conditions that are making people extremely vulnerable to severe consequences of COVID are things like diabetes, obesity, and heart disease. These conditions can be treated, and there's a lot of evidence that by shifting to a more of a plant-based diet, that those conditions can be resolved. So believe it or not, in wealthier countries at least, one of the most important things we can do to protect rainforests and the climate is to just simply shift our diets away from rampant overconsumption towards, but notably of meat, towards a nutritious mix of plant-based foods that are less resource intensive, require less land, and are better for our health. So that's one thing we can do. And then another thing that we need to do is we, people of faith and people in all walks of life, need to join forces with the Indigenous brothers and sisters, these Indigenous leaders who for thousands of years, at great sacrifice and great commitment, have been protecting our tropical rainforests and therefore our climate. And they've done that for all of us, and we need to help them now at this time of need, particularly when they're being exposed to additional threats due to COVID, where the government protections is not there, the illegal operations, mining and so on, are threatening their lives and livelihoods. In terms of measuring success and measuring where we are in this trajectory of forest loss or forest protection, there's actually technologies that are now available that are very effective. And the Global Forest Watch is run by the World Resources Institute. Every year does a snapshot of where we are in terms of forest protection and forest loss. And using satellites and data in almost real time, you can actually see what's happening. And in last year, 2019, the report has just come out a few weeks ago, and it showed that, in fact, we still have a long way to go, that in 2019, it's tragic to understand that every 6 seconds, we lost a football field, a size football field of tropical rainforest. Every 6 seconds, that's every minute, every hour, every day, every week, every month for the whole year. And that's a huge loss. Within that, there are some lessons. One is that Brazil actually accounts for about a third of that loss. There have been policies enacted that have undermined regulations and protection, and it hasn't always been that case. Brazil has in the past been a real leader in forest protection. Between 2004 and 2012, Brazil managed to reduce by 80% their deforestation rate by basically enforcing the laws, investing in protected areas, protecting indigenous people's lands, importantly, and reducing the incentives to deforest. So Brazil has shown the world that it's possible to reduce deforestation dramatically. And interestingly, at the very same time this happened, food production increased. So that shows that you can protect forests and increase food production. Those goals are not necessarily at odds. You don't need to lose forests in order to protect, in order to produce enough food. So Brazil has been an interesting example. So but this last year, dramatically worrying signs. But on the positive side, Indonesia has actually, for the fifth year in a row, has actually had a reduction in forest loss by enforcing laws, by enforcing moratorium. So we've seen some real progress there. Colombia, too, with the peace process, 2016, I think, there was a huge increase in forest loss. And now, though, in the last year, it's been reduced. So there's quite a mix out there of positive stories, and we fortunately know now what it takes to solve this problem, and we're seeing it happen in some places and not in others. It comes down to political will. It comes down to government policy, and it comes down to people, leaders in all walks of life, influencing the government to take the right steps. And we're seeing one of the most encouraging things that we're seeing is the way religious leaders from all faiths are stepping up. We're seeing it happen. Pope Francis and the Catholic Church and the Laudato Si and the Synod on the Amazon, and the Muslim leaders in Indonesia are with fatwas against deforestation. And so we're seeing Buddhists in Southeast Asia protecting trees. So we're seeing faiths of all kind getting into the action in such an inspiring and encouraging way. And that's why we at the United Nations are just thrilled to be able to work with people and leaders of faith in the various countries to exert the kind of moral authority that faith leaders have. They're willing to step up and unleash and use the political influence they have, the financial resources they have, and the moral authority they have. And there's nothing more inspiring and powerful than that to turn the tide. So that's why we're so excited about the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative and working with people and leaders and communities of faith around the world, because we think that can be a game changer. Hello, my name is Charles Mcneill, and I'm with United Nations Environment Program. Something that we all need to have our attention on is protecting tropical rainforests. That there's no way to solve the climate crisis without protecting those forests. Those forests have multiple benefits. They provide water, food, jobs for billions of people. They protect the climate. They provide water for agriculture locally and a continent away. They're iconic, exuberant expressions of life. They're incredibly important. And we have an opportunity, each of us, to take action on that. The greatest driver of forest loss is agriculture, and it doesn't have to be. We actually don't need to lose one more hectare of forest to agriculture. We have enough land to feed all the people in the world now, and the 10 billion people expected by 2050, if we do three things. If we increase agricultural efficiency, if we reduce food waste, and if we shift our diet to eat more plants and less animals. This is all doable. It has multiple benefits. By shifting our diet, we increase our personal health as well as our planetary health. We've seen historically that countries have succeeded in reducing deforestation. It can be done. It's being done. It needs to be done more consistently, and it requires political will, governments need to take action, and we need to insist that they do. In addition, protecting the rights of Indigenous peoples is absolutely essential. Indigenous peoples hold the rights to land where 80% of the world's biodiversity is. We've seen that Indigenous peoples protect their forests better than any other way, better than national parks. There's less carbon, less forest loss, less species loss on Indigenous peoples' lands than any other lands, and they need our help right now. In terms of an affirmation or prayer, I have a couple of ideas. One would be, may people of faith continue to expand their engagement in addressing the climate, biodiversity, and forest crises, and bring their passion, their commitment, their influence, and their voices to bear to cause a transformation. Another idea I had is that may all people of faith join together with Indigenous peoples around the world to protect the forests, biodiversity, and climate of our planet. And another is, may we honor, respect, and protect the animals and plants and other living things with whom we share this planet. And one more idea came up. May people of faith get involved in transforming the way we impact our planet by adjusting our ways of life and advocating for positive change everywhere we go.